All right, well, I think we can probably go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. My name is Graham Owen with the Department of Planning and Development with Fairfax County. Hope you're all doing well. Just make sure that you're in the right meeting. We actually have a couple of SSPA meetings going on at this moment. We're going to be talking today about SSPA nominations or proposals to change the comprehensive plan. And the grouping that we're talking about today are nominations that are located in the Southern Mount Vernon Supervisor District, specifically looking at Lorton, Woodlawn, and then the Virginia 95 Business Park. And so if you're here for any of those nominations, you're in the right place. And so we're very pleased. I've got a couple of colleagues of mine that are on the call, Aaron Kleibanner, who is going to go through the nominations and a kind of a comprehensive planning 101 to get us started this evening. We also have Leah Niebauer, who works in our division, who's been assisting with the review of the nominations. See a couple of familiar faces on here. Commissioner Sargent, Planning Commissioner Sargent, good to see you, sir. And then also we have Supervisor Dan Stork, who's with us, and thank you for joining us, Supervisor Stork. And if you'd like to say any kind of opening remarks, any introductions, happy to turn the proverbial microphone over to you, sir.
I don't know how this works.
And Supervisor Stork, you're muted, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at one time, but I did want to welcome everybody to the SSPA process and nominations for the southern part of Mount Vernon District. This is a great opportunity to learn about what's going on. We, as I said, when I did this at the northern side, we are in the beginning of this process. So we look forward to everybody's comments. I know staff in particular needs those comments now to be able to assess and kind of look at 360 what this could mean, so they can then bring back, frankly, a little bit more information to make a decision about whether or not there should be any further consideration of these nominations. So you can make a difference by listening and learning and then sharing your comments. Absolutely appreciated by all of us. So thank you very much for being on the presentation tonight.
All right, and thank you once again. If you are on the call and not speaking, I would ask everybody to mute themselves just to make sure that we have the best sound quality that we can get. There are a couple of, there's a little bit of feedback on the call. So thanks again. Thank you, Supervisor Stork, for those remarks. Once again, tonight is a night where we're going to be discussing a series of site-specific plan amendment nominations that were submitted back in October of last year. This is kind of the earliest opportunity, as Supervisor Stork indicated, to begin the review and community discussion on several proposals to change the comprehensive plan. We're going to do kind of two things tonight. The first is an introduction to the comprehensive plan, what it is, how it works, how it's used, and then also talk about how it can be changed through the site-specific plan amendment process. And then that'll be led by Aaron Kleibanner, who's my colleague. And then we'll go into a series of 5 focused discussions on the 5 site-specific plan amendment nominations in the Mount Vernon District. So staff will provide approximately 5-minute presentation to kind of give an overview of these nominations. That'll be followed by a presentation by nominators. So there's 5 nominators that have put these nominations forward for consideration. And then there will be an opportunity for questions and answers from anybody that has any questions. So we're going to have our agenda is it's pretty packed. We're going to try to stick to about 10 minutes for the presentations and about 10 minutes if we need to additional time for questions and answers. But we're going to try to stick to that to be able to get everybody out of here by around 9 o'clock. If we do need to go over, we can. But just wanted to let people know we're going to try to keep things kind of moving at a pretty good pace. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron so we can go over the agenda in a little bit more detail. So Aaron, floor is yours.
Thank you, Graham. Okay, so we'll start off with an introduction to the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a guide that reflects the community's long-term land use vision for the county. And it is not the law like the zoning ordinance. It is dynamic, and we're constantly updating it because Fairfax County is such a dynamic area. And the plan amendment process involves extensive community engagement and many planning stakeholders. So the plan document itself has basically three major components. The first is the policy plan, which contains countywide goals and objectives that affect the entire county. Then there are the 4 area plans. These contain more detailed land use guidance and on density intensity, and subdivides the county into further smaller areas like planning districts and community planning sectors. There are also special areas which have detailed guidance. Those would be things such as the industrial areas like we're talking about tonight, or another word for it is activity centers, we kind of use interchangeably, and community business centers, transit station areas, etc. And then there are a number of maps associated with the plan. There's the comprehensive plan land use map, which contains more generalized land use and density intensity recommendations. There's the future transportation improvement plan map, also bicycle network plan map for future bike facilities, trails plan map, and then there is the glossary of commonly used terms throughout the plan. And another important document that's part of the plan is the concept for future development. And this map shows that. And basically, it's the overarching guide to the area plans, and the concepts policy direction, which is illustrated here, is basically where all growth is being directed into what we call designated mixed use centers. And I mentioned some of those already. And there are also other classifications shown on the map that embody the different types of mixed use centers. And then there are the residential areas of the county as well. So for example, the ones we're going to be talking about tonight, the gray areas are the industrial areas. That's one thing to keep in mind here. Red areas are the community business centers. Those are mostly along the northern stretch of Richmond Highway. And what's going to also be important tonight are the yellow areas, which are the suburban neighborhoods, which are mostly planned not to change, but they have a mix of housing types, and they have other community facilities, schools and public facilities, and some neighborhood retail. And then there are the green areas, which are the low density residential areas of the county, which are pretty much planned for no change. And they also contain lots of sensitive, or at times not lots of sensitive, environmental resources. So some common terms that we use a lot in the plan are density and intensity. And these are terms that we use to talk about how much development there is on a piece of property. And for residential development, we're talking about density, which is measured in dwelling units per acre. And the slides here are showing some common density ranges for different types of residential development. So the upper left photo is showing a common single family detached housing density. Townhouses are on the right, upper right. And then on the bottom are 2 common apartment or multifamily residential densities. And basically, the lower the number, the less development there is on the site. And for non-residential development, the term we use is intensity. And this is expressed as floor area ratio. This is basically the square footage of the building over the square footage of the land that it sits on. And this is just showing a typical density, which you might find in, for example, a transit station area, a 1.0 FAR. And as you can see, the diagram is illustrating that it can either be, the form of that development can either be higher in height, or it can be a lower building that's spread out on more of the land area of the site it sits on. So again, the difference between planning and zoning, again, the comprehensive plan is a set of recommendations and general policies. It is not the law. The zoning ordinance is the law that implements the recommendations in the comprehensive plan, and it includes regulations that govern things such as building setbacks, building heights, open space, required open space, and other features. And proposals to rezone, to change the zoning, the regulations on a piece of property are evaluated for conformance with the recommendations in the comprehensive plan, and for special exception applications are evaluated for harmony with the comprehensive plan, which speaks to impacts of a proposal. So the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Work Program is the main area that lists all of the planning studies that staff has been directed to work on by the Board of Supervisors. And we have four main types of studies. The first are countywide policy studies. One of these you might be familiar with that's going on right now is the housing preservation, affordable housing preservation policy plan amendment. That's a countywide amendment. Area-wide studies would be like the Lorton visioning study that's going on right now and the Embark Richmond Highway study. Of course, we're in the site-specific plan amendment process, so these are site-specific nominations we're talking about now. And then there are other board authorized studies that can happen anytime during the year, and they have their own unique schedules and public involvement parameters. So the site-specific plan amendment process provides an opportunity for the public to propose a land use change or a nomination to the comprehensive plan for a single site or a collection of properties. The goal for SSPA is to provide the community with an active role in shaping the long-term vision of the county, and has been in place since 2017. We recently underwent an evaluation in the past year of the process that resulted in some changes to the overall timeline of review, enhanced community engagement, achieving a better balance of resources on site-specific amendments versus other types of plan amendments, such as long-range or area-wide studies and countywide policy plan amendments. And prior to SSPA, many of you might have been participated or been familiar with the area plans review process, which is very similar. So SSPA involves, again, the review of proposals called nominations, which request changes to the comprehensive plan land use recommendations for individual sites. So anyone can nominate a site for consideration, and the proposals are evaluated at the earliest stage in what is called screening, and that's illustrated on the left side of the slide here. The purpose of screening is to consider the nominations that have been submitted at a high policy level for considerations to determine whether they should be formally evaluated on the Comprehensive Plan Amendment Work Program. So this is the very beginning of the process, as Supervisor Stork pointed out earlier. The nominations that are added to the work program would be evaluated in much more detail as plan amendments when they get onto the work program. Either following concurrent or with the formal study, an application could be filed to also rezone the property after the plan amendment's adopted. And following that are other approvals such as submission of a formal site plan and then construction. And these are all parts of what we call the development process, the overall development process. Many of the nominations will make it all the way through that process, some will not. So again, in the Mount Vernon district, we received 9 nominations, and we're going to be talking about 5 of these tonight. But overall in the county, we received, or the board accepted 70 of the nominations out of 75. So again, we are at the very beginning at the screening stage. And this is they're very much a hallmark of the SSPA process. We're holding these community meetings during screening to ensure that those living and working near the nomination sites are engaged early in the process. The nominations are being grouped based on geography so that people can learn all about the nominations in their area. And these community meetings will be an early opportunity for the public to learn about the nominations, provide comments to staff and the nominators about the nominations, and identify issues that are particularly relevant to the sites. And we will take these comments that we receive at these meetings and transmit them to the Planning Commission at a later stage in the process. And that later stage, the next stage, is that the Planning Commission will hold a public workshop in lieu of a public hearing, which will allow for a more deliberative screening discussion among the Planning Commission members, staff, nominators, and the public, and result in a Planning Commission recommendation on which of the nominations should be added to the work program for further review. So once again, the workshops will be open to the public and community members will be able to participate in those discussions. So in a nutshell, a screening is intended to determine priorities among the nominations received and which should be studied further. So as a result, the feedback that would be most helpful at this stage is illustrated on the left. As you consider the nominations, please ask yourself, what are your preliminary thoughts about the proposal? What community considerations should be considered if the proposal goes forward to the next stage and is formally evaluated? And are there significant concerns or opportunities in the nomination going to the next phase and getting on the work program? And more detailed questions, though, such as what are the impacts of a nomination like transportation and so on, those will be answered during the next stage of the process. So again, please share any and all feedback that you have with us. And this is just a timeline showing the process. So again, we're here in January and February doing the screening community meetings. The next phase is the Planning Commission workshops. And then the board action on the new work program will be in the March-April timeframe. Here are the Planning Commission workshop dates. And again, the public is invited to these meetings. And staff will summarize the comments that we get from you tonight for the planning commissioners. So what happens if a nomination passes screening? Again, as I said before, it will be added to the work program for further detailed review, and the board will prioritize the review of the proposal and public engagement. If a nomination does not pass through the screening process, it is removed from consideration for this cycle of SSPA and is not added to the work program. Properties subject to the nominations could be potentially redeveloped under its existing comprehensive plan recommendation and or prior zoning approvals. It can be resubmitted in a future cycle for the same property, but nominators would need to justify what has changed or what other significant justification for reviewing the same nomination would be again. So any questions at this point?
What constitutes passing screening or not? What's the function that does that?
So again, staff and so again, we'll be conveying your comments to the Planning Commission at the Planning Commission workshops. We'll also be providing them with our staff analysis. The nominators will also be able to speak at those. And then the Planning Commission will formulate recommendations again on which nominations should go onto the work program, the next phase, and which should not for this phase of SSPA, or for this cycle, excuse me.
So the planning commission is the actual screener.
They're the ones who make the recommendations, yes, to the board. Mhm.
Yeah, the planning commission, they put together kind of the list of nominations that they think should advance for formal review. The community will be invited to participate in that discussion through the workshops, but it's ultimately the board's call. And so they won't have a hearing, but they'll have an action item that will take the planning commission's recommendation. If they want to make changes to it, they can. But it is the board's prerogative to study any of these nominations as formal plan amendments. So you got one more question.
Yeah, one more question. Can you explain what conditions or factors are considered in deciding whether or not one of these proposals passes the screening or not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can send you kind of the formal list because there are some specific criteria that we are using. One of them is kind of broadly speaking, is something generally consistent with broader county policies related to land use, environment, other factors that kind of get at, is this a logical planning area to look at? And is the proposed use, generally speaking, something that could be considered in harmony with the comprehensive plan? So that's the first thing. We also have some specific criteria that we use to kind of get at that question in a little bit further detail. Those are criteria that we have on our website, but I'll drop a link to those criteria. One thing that we'll note is, when in doing these community meetings, the people that live near the sites, work near the sites, know the sites best. And so a big part of this, from a big benefit from a staff standpoint, is being able to actually hear from people because they're most familiar with the sites and the characteristics of them. So when we're doing these and trying to determine what our staff recommendation would be, we're also listening to the feedback that we receive in the community as a part of that discussion. But I'll drop a link in the chat to the SSPA guide because that contains kind of the the explicit criteria that we use to evaluate the nominations.
Hi, this is Alicia.
Oh, let me
Flores.
ask one question.
I'm sorry. So what I'm hearing is the constituents that live near a site do have a voice in this, and it is taken under consideration. Is that correct?
Absolutely, that's correct.
Okay.
That's why we're doing these meetings. Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. The only reason I found out about this meeting is because someone happened to post it on a Facebook page locally. How do we get more information out better to a community about these types of things?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a couple of ways. One of the things that we found works the best is to sign up for the district supervisor's newsletter and/or our comprehensive plan amendment listserv. So those are two vehicles that we use to put out information about planning projects, kind of writ large, but certainly about the SSPA process because it's just one of the things that we're working on in the planning division. So I'll include a couple of links that you can use, including to our Facebook page, our comprehensive plan listserv, and then I can also provide you some contact information for getting on the newsletter.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, let me ask one question. My background is 30 years in the Corps of Engineers, including being a district engineer. And it disturbs me that I didn't hear anything about cost benefit analysis as a criteria for determining if you're going to fund or actually do a project. What kind of analysis is done?
Sure. So again, that's the criteria that we have for the SSPA process, the justification criteria. This is to determine whether or not we should study something further. It is not looking at impacts at this stage. So cost benefit analysis, as you're describing, that's kind of looking at, once we have a formal proposal to look at and try to determine what's the best approach in terms of approvals. We're not at that stage yet. As Supervisor Stork was mentioning, this is an opportunity to see which of the nominations, because there's 70 of them across the county, should be evaluated in further detail. It's not an approval, it's far from it. So this is one step in what can be a fairly long process. So, but I'll drop a link to the justification criteria so y'all can take a look at what we use to evaluate these proposals. I think we do need to move on unless there's other questions. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll do our best to respond to them. But we do need to move on because we're already starting to run a little bit behind. So I'm going to ask Aaron, could you move on to the next nomination, which I believe is the Boston Boulevard nomination.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. So again, here are the 5 nominations that we're talking about and the order that they're in, highlighted in yellow. So the first nomination is the MV003 Boston Boulevard. This is in the I-95 Virginia 95 Business Park. This is on 28 acres. It's within the comprehensive plan I-95 industrial area, and this is broken up into different land units, and that's land unit C of that area. The adopted comprehensive plan is for industrial use up to a 0.50 floor area ratio. The nomination is proposing residential use at a density up to 25 dwelling units per acre. With the nomination package, one of the things we ask nominators to send in is a concept plan, which is just a basic visual illustration, a very basic visual illustration of the text of the nomination. This is not what a built project would look like. So this nomination is proposing single-family attached units, 2/2 townhomes and mid-rise multifamily dwelling units with up to 10% workforce dwelling units and open space and recreational amenities. And it's also proposing 2 new road connections out to Rolling Road and the Saratoga Shopping Center, and also working with the neighboring tax map parcel 11A, which is a cul-de-sac to get their primary access. So considerations that staff has identified for this is that the concept for future development recommends retaining industrial, that the I-95 and the I-95 industrial area recommends retaining industrial character, and notes that residential uses are not appropriate in industrial areas. There are no existing or planned residential units uses in the I-95 industrial area, and the county's economic success plan also has a goal of maintaining access to manufacturing, distribution, and other industrial uses for county residents and businesses. There are other uses that also could be pursued on this site, and there is an appendix in the land use element of the policy plan, which are guidelines for commercial building repurposing, and that includes in industrial areas. So now I will turn it over to the nominator for their presentation.
Hey, Aaron, this is Tony Calabrese. I'm going to grab the screen if I may.
Yes.
Bear with me, make sure I get my PowerPoint correct and that everyone can see it. I'm hoping and assuming that's popped up.
Yep.
Terrific. If you can't hear me, let me know. I appreciate very much the time this evening. I'm going to rifle through a couple of, I think, illuminating and helpful slides. And good evening to Supervisor Stork and Commissioner Sargent, Commissioner Clark. Appreciate staff's efforts. I think it's very laudable that Supervisor Stork, you've got 75 plus folks keenly interested in this important area and in the district. Many of you probably know this property well. I'm going to do this with alacrity, so bear with me and I'll be happy to answer questions at the end. Of course, here's 95. This is the tail end of the Fairfax County Parkway, Saratoga Shopping Center. Here's where the Costco is located. And this is a really interesting and unique opportunity that we are pleased to present for your all's consideration this evening. We would respectfully submit, for the reasons I'll rifle through, that it merits exactly the process that Aaron and Graham and Pam are overviewing. It's an area that we respectfully submit could use some attention and some fresh thinking. This is just a blow up of the almost 30 acres. There's 6 or 7 different parcels, making this a really interesting and unique potential consolidation. Again, here's the Saratoga Shopping Center. And of course, you can see the various surrounding communities. There's Fairfax County Parkway, and again, the Costco there to the east. Spent a lot of time really analyzing this quadrant, this property, and excited to bring the proposal before you. That's just a blow up of the different uses. Of course, the shopping center, the area that we're talking about, Boston Boulevard going here to Costco to the east, Fullerton Road, which comes through to Rolling Road, there to the north of the property, and of course, Fort Belvoir up to the top. I think the process was really well summarized. Appreciate staff doing that. This is not the specific plans or specific proposal, but I think these are attractive precedent images of what we think is possible in an area that dates back 40 plus years, and many of us know well. I grew up actually not too very far from the property, and it's been interesting to see how things change, as they always do. Here's some of the concepts of open spaces, play areas, dog parks, what have you, within the project that I'll get to in just a moment, that I think will make this particularly interesting, and frankly, some placemaking that doesn't exist on the property today that many of you, I'm sure, live close to and perhaps know well. Here's a blow up of the 6 parcels that were previously reflected, as noted by staff. It's 28 acres, it's zoned industrial, developed with 1 2-story low-rise warehouse and office uses, most of which were constructed in the 80s, some more recently. I'll just note that this is the land unit C that Aaron was alluding to, the I-95 corridor, and he correctly summarized what the plan calls for to date. When we step back and look at the context, and frankly, some of the owners are actually on the call this evening, we did some important research, which I think is telling. And to the question posed by one of the residents, a bit of a cost-benefit analysis, if you will, of what's happening in this area generally and specifically on this site. There are 2 of the 6 buildings have actually been vacant for over 6 years now. The assessed values of one of the buildings reached the peak of, as you can see, $26+ million. It's now plummeted in value down to $6.3 million. I think it's very legitimate consideration. What does that do? What is this type of unfortunate decline in the industrial properties that are 40 plus years old in this area? What does that do to the commercial tax base? And frankly, it makes for more of an imposition on the residential tax base. We were distressed to see, but this is a pretty thorough analysis here in a chart, which I don't expect anybody to memorize or be able to recite back. So I'm just highlighting some of the key facts and statistics. As of last October, there was 55%, or over 500,000 square feet of vacancy just within the black dots that you all see here. And while repurposing is a laudable objective, frankly, when you have 40-year-old buildings designed for a different market at a different time, it's really difficult to do that in a way that necessarily continues to function with an industrial and warehouse space. In fact, we would respectfully submit that one of the real benefits of this opportunity and the county considering these almost 30 acres is frankly to remove some of the vacant buildings that are bringing down rents in this area, and I think really acting as a hindrance to the viability of this industrial area. As noted here, a number of the older buildings frankly just can't compete. Oh, got too many slides there. Just can't compete with newer mixed-use activity centers. It's extremely difficult to retrofit them. They're obsolete in lots of different ways. And I think that this vacancy, this 500,000 square feet and plummeting rental rates is really a drag rather than a benefit to this quadrant of Fairfax County and to the Mount Vernon district. Housing is a strategic objective of the board and of the county for all the self-evident reasons. And I just want to give you a little bit more flavor. Again, this is really intended to be conceptual in nature, but a couple critical elements I'd like to quickly highlight. One is that we were very attentive to the fact, here's Boston Boulevard. As you guys know, it does not go through to Rolling Road, frankly, as we don't think it should. And so it's critical from our perspective, we can implement a cul-de-sac here to keep the industrial and warehouse and Costco traffic flowing to the east, not to the west. We think there's a real opportunity for placemaking and walkability. Obviously, it have to be done carefully and safely, and will ultimately have quite a bit of information about that in order to really help sustain the retailers and restaurants and viability of Saratoga to the west side of Rolling Road. So we could have lots of detail ultimately about that. The question, the issue of compatibility is totally legitimate. We're glad staff raised it. But when you step back and look at the proximity of this site to the surrounding residential, basically residential is all reflected in yellow, as you all well know. The distance, of course, from 95 or the Fairfax County Parkway, and again, a unique opportunity to consolidate almost 30 acres here and do something we think really noteworthy. We believe that it merits additional thought and consideration by the Mount Vernon constituents, South County Federation, many of you who are on the line this evening. This is just another blow up of the area, giving you a context. Obviously, we have residential immediately throughout the south to 95, and of course, further south and obviously to the west. And doing this in a way that is compatible, that would establish a buffer between the warehouse and industrial to the east is something we're very much focused on. We know that you all are very much focused on capacity and infrastructure issues. We did a quick review of Saratoga, Key, and Lewis. They all, as you probably know, have capacity. That's just one of a number of factors that ultimately will be considered. And we are, in fact, presenting to South County Federation at the end of the month, and delighted to do that. I have a lot of old friends on South County as well. This is not intended to be any delineation of final architecture. It just gives you a sense and an ambiance about what we think is possible on a site that we respectfully submit has a lot of really interesting potential and is really foursquare consistent with the excellent summary that you heard from Aaron and Graham about reviewing areas that we think might need a refresh and additional consideration. It is a long and very detailed process, one that we know very well, particularly many of you on the phone know very well, and we would be excited and honored to participate with you in a detailed evaluation of this site. I exceeded my 5-slide limit and maybe my 5 minutes, but I'm happy to take a breath, and I can stop sharing if you guys would like, or leave that up there if there are specific questions.
Mr. Firth, go ahead.
Unmute there. The Costco, I believe, also has a plan amendment for tonight. I think those are totally different and don't kind of overcross each other there. I used to live for 12 years or so at the corner of Rolling Road and Alban Road, right around the corner, and very familiar with this site and this area back there. It is certainly aging. There's a few that could be subject to the same type of plan amendments in there. I think this is a great use and would help support the Saratoga Shopping Center that's back there. There's already kind of a carved trail that I think the slide's gone, but it kind of cuts through from where to Boston Boulevard on the other side. But this is a lot of what the Lorton Visioning is looking at, this exact type of mixed use in the Lorton area. So I would prefer to see this, continue on in the process. I don't see that there's an issue with changing it. It's not really a quote unquote industrial area back there at the moment. These are aging commercial buildings, and I think one thing that's lacking in the county that the county's looking for is more residential, more mixed use, as is stated in their strategic plan. So that's my 2 cents. I'd like to see it move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Firth. Dale Rumberger.
Thank you very much. And not admitting to knowing Tony Calabrese at all, especially after last night's basketball results. But I would like to take a second, and I did not speak with Nick about this, nor Mr. Calabrese especially. I'm excited about this proposal because what you're doing is something that you're doing out in the Silver Line. Only there, your Silver Line, you're putting your business as commercial interests and housing instead of industrial. And seeing that we are the home to 6 of the 7 concrete batching plants in Fairfax County, we're perhaps a little sensitive to that industrial moniker along that. I think what I like about this, especially Ms. Calabrese looking at the school capacity issues, as well as the fact that Lewis High School will undergo a renovation in the next 3 years, which will even expand capacity beyond that. So I think those are all exciting proposals, but the idea of a mixed-use residential development and the ability to potentially be employed walking distance along there, as well as the fact that both Fullerton and Boston Road are both already marked as bike lanes, and they have bike lanes on them. This meets so many criteria, except for the honor-bound 105 million year old rule that it's the I-95 corridor and it has to remain industrial. I'm not sure we have that same usage on I-66, which is clearly a transportation and industrial corridor. So to me, I would hope the county would take a look at this and move this forward and let them continue to refine. Certainly have several suggestions concerning the slope of the land around there, the fact that Pohet Creek backs up there, the development, all the steps would have to be taken to protect the water turbidity, et cetera. But I think it's well worth advancing forward, and I would hope you would do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rumberger. Any other comments? Any other questions?
Is there human resources?
Not a question, but do support this particular application moving forward.
They offer these services, these coaching services, these facilitation services.
Thank you, Tim. All right, well, if there are no other questions, one thing I'll note is if you do think of a comment or question later on, you can always email it to dpdsspa@fairfaxcounty.gov. We'll use that email address to collect any comments that we receive after the meeting, and we'll also transmit those to the Planning Commission. So if you think of something later on, feel free to email it. I'll drop the link to that email address in the chat for you.
Graham,
I think we.
Yeah, Graham, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tony.
I actually have to segue out to the Reston SSPA, which is hopefully replete with far fewer Hokies than Mr. Rumberger and anybody else who is a tech graduate on the line at the moment. Jennifer's going to remain on if you have additional questions. I thank you all very much for your time and interest, and I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you, Tony. I don't know what Hokie scheduled these two SSPA meetings on the same night, but sorry about that.
That's okay. Mr. Calabrese is leaving, so we can actually speak faster now because everyone else will understand.
All right. With that being said, I think we should probably move on to the next nomination. So Costco, Boston Boulevard. Andy, do you want to take it away?
Yep. So this is on approximately 2.8 acres, again in Land Unit C of the I-95 industrial area, and plan for industrial use up to 0.50 FAR. The nomination is to consolidate with the Costco property next door, and provide a vehicle fueling facility and or additional member parking. Here's the concept plan. So there's an existing office building here now, and so the fuel canopy would replace that. Considerations for this, again, for the I-95 industrial area, the guidance states that it should remain in an industrial character and that commercial uses should be limited. The Costco parcel itself was developed under an option for community serving retail use that is about 30 years old. New development should be of a compatible use type and scale with the surrounding development. The fueling station canopy is a commercial and retail use and would be consistent with the neighboring Costco development use. And there are also recommendations for increasing multimodal, or I should say, another concern is to really pay careful attention to enhancing the circulation within the site for pedestrians and bikes, as well as cars, and to provide additional landscaping and buffering to surrounding properties. So I will turn it over to the nominator now.
Thank you, Aaron. If I could share the screen. And do you all see the presentation? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm David Houston. I'm with Bean, Kinney and Corman. I'm a former colleague of Mr. Calabrese and also a Virginia graduate, so I did enjoy the basketball game last night. With me tonight in the audience somewhere is John Alvarado from Costco Wholesale Corporation, and also Nick Georges and Greg Elwood from Bowler Engineering. A little bit of background on this parcel. It is 2.81 acres. It has a two-story office building that was built 35 years ago. The building is vacant except for one restaurant tenant. A young go-getter in 1988 named David Houston got the special exception for that tenant. And then 20 years later, he wrote the lease. Costco is stuck with the old and decrepit David Houston presenting before you tonight. Costco is currently negotiating to purchase the parcel from the current owner, Finmark, which it itself only purchased the Virginia 95 Business Park about 6 or 7 months ago. This is the only Costco in Fairfax County that does not have a fuel station, and their members are asking them to put one here. This parcel of land fits in perfectly with the current concept for Costco's, in that when the Costco was first built, it was a price club. Back in the early 90s, they didn't have gas as an option for customer member convenience at the time. Now it's part of standard protocol. The concept plan that is before you is very typical for new fuel facilities, and it is very similar to the most recent new fuel facility at the Costco on Richmond Highway. Our team worked on that together. Details of this are, we're not adding any access points on Boston Boulevard. We're using the existing road network. What would be contemplated is 12 fuel pumps, which is 24 fuel dispensers under a canopy. Costco sells what they call top tier gas. It has extra additives and the like. As with all Costco service stations, there are no repairs, inspections, or storage of vehicles, and they do not sell any other items other than the fuel at their service stations. The only signage would be on the canopy, and it was all Costco stations. They have limited hours of operation. They typically open early in the morning, but they close an hour after the warehouse building closes. And what our traffic consultants determined, at least on Richmond Highway, was that 85% of the trips that would be generated by this use are already on the road, in that they're made up of Costco members already shopping at the warehouse building, or Costco members who are driving nearby. So that means that only 15% of the trips would come to this location as a primary destination. As Aaron mentioned, we've requested this plan amendment nomination in order to sort of add this one parcel to the 15-acre Costco warehouse parcel that exists, and combine it as community serving retail. As mentioned previously, the building is 2 stories, was built as an office building, but it has no office tenants now, only the one restaurant tenant. I thought the vacancy is around 80%, although I saw Mr. Calabrese's numbers had it at closer to 70%. If we are successful in moving this nomination along, the entitlement process would be to rezone the parcel to the C6, which is the same as the warehouse, and also to seek a special exception for the vehicle fueling station use. Costco would like to proceed immediately on this. We actually thought we could do this under the existing zoning and had meetings with the county, and the zoning evaluation division pointed out that the language in the comprehensive plan was not conducive to this particular use on this particular parcel, but invited us to go through the SSPA process. Our team is online and prepared to answer any questions or respond to any comments. And I would welcome the opportunity.
Go ahead, Hillary. Hillary?
Yeah, I think this is a terrific opportunity. Personally, I visit that store frequently. I think there would be environmental impact that could be positive with people making fewer visits to a separate gas station, saving a little bit. I also know in some cases, loyal customers of Costco will go to Prince William County because gas is cheaper there at Costco than many gas stations in the Fairfax County area. It would bring more revenue to the county to have people getting gas at that Costco. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Mary Payton, go ahead.
I'm a frequent user of the Costco gas station. I think it's great. You'll like it. Costco staff moves the cars through very quickly. Of idling and emissions, some, but not as much as you might expect because they move right along. Also has the cheapest gas according to Gas Buddy in the area. So I think you should do it.
All right, thank you, Mary. Gary B., you're next.
Could you explain a little bit about the process of, I'm assuming that'd be underground tanks put in or something? Is that how it would work? And then the gas would be trucked in there to the tanks? Is that how it works?
Yes. There would be 3 underground tanks, and the delivery of the fuel would, if it's typical with most Costco fuel stations, it would be daily. The layout of the fuel pumps would be designed in a manner that the fueling would not interfere with the cars trying to fill up.
All right, Gary, did you have any other questions?
No, I think that covered it. Thank you.
All right, next is Jay.
Hey, thank you. I think it's a good idea to do that. I guess my only question or concern is that is there what's happening to this business owner? Is there some kind of or this restaurant, small business owners? Is there some kind of accommodation that's going to be made for this business owner?
The current owner, the seller of the property, will be negotiating with the restaurant. I'm not sure how much term is left on their lease. With the vacancy rates on Boston Boulevard, and especially if the earlier nomination goes through, that makes it even harder for that restaurant to operate and succeed.
And this restaurant's been in business for 20 years?
I think it was 10 years. 10 years ago.
10 years. Okay, I think that's the only downside to that.
There's a special exception for restaurant use in an industrial zone, and several restaurants have been in the space over the years.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have been making a go of it. If it's, they've been in business for 10 years, that's the only downside to this is that, a family or whomever's made a business out of this and now they're being displaced. So I was just hoping that somehow or other they get a good accommodation, get some help with moving and reestablishing their business somewhere else. This is their livelihood. So Costco's a big company. They're just fine. Don't get me wrong. I think it's still a good idea to put the gas station there. I just feel bad for this business, this family, whoever owns this restaurant and operates it. It seems like they've been doing it successfully for 10 years. And I just hope and pray that there's an accommodation for those people.
And if we were successful with this process, we're probably 2 years at the earliest away from actual commencement of construction because of the plan amendment process, the zoning entitlement, and then the site plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Any other comments or questions on Costco? All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Houston. I think we'll move on to the next nomination.
Okay, this is the IMP building located on approximately 8.8 acres. This is in suburban neighborhood area number 3, which is south of the Woodlawn Community Business Center. The adopted plan is for office use, retail use, or hotel/conference center use up to 0.50 FAR. The nomination is for multifamily residential use up to 30 dwelling units per acre. This is also within the Woodlawn Historic Overlay District, and a portion of the property is in a floodplain, a resource protection area, and an environmental quality corridor. This is also located within a half-mile walk of a planned bus rapid transit station at the intersection of Richmond Highway and Cooper Road and a realigned Sacramento Drive. This is the concept plan included with the nomination. So it's up to 245 units, 3 stories. That 35-foot height limit is part of the Historic Overlay District regulations. And as you can see, they're proposing to preserve a portion of the property, again, that's in the sensitive environmental areas. And the concept plan here also calls out some nearby hotels, proximity of other residential uses, and of course the Woodlawn plantation. So considerations again are that there is a large, or a significant portion that is within this resource protection area or in the floodplain. Again, it's within the Woodlawn Historic Overlay District. This district includes regulations that new buildings should be of a compatible mass, color, scale, and visual impact to the Woodlawn Plantation and Washington Gristmill historic buildings, and subject again to that maximum building height of 35 feet. The nomination package or justification statement states that there was a recent marketing study for Richmond Highway that indicates that the office market is weak in this area, and especially for older office buildings such as the IMP building, and that the building has also suffered from high vacancy rates. The nomination also cites the fact that the adopted plan for hotel conference center has not been implemented due to the presence of the number of hotels in the area. And there are residential units or residential uses abutting the property to the north, as I stated. And now I'll call for the nominators presentation.
Yep. Good evening. Thanks, Aaron. My name is Evan Pritchard. I'm the land use attorney for the property owner. And I have a brief presentation for you that I will share now. Yeah, Aaron did a great job of summarizing the overview of the application. This is a proposal to potentially replace the existing office building known as the IMP building with multifamily building. As Aaron said, that this is an image of the existing office building that you can see from Richmond Highway. It was built in 1987, just under 68,000 square feet. My client purchased the property in a foreclosure sale back in 2003. As you all are aware, that was quite a different economic and office landscape back in those days. As was mentioned, it's been tough leasing conditions in recent years for a building in this location of this size and character. It's currently 40% occupied. However, two of the major leases are going to be up in October of this year. And at that point, the occupancy is going to be closer to 15%. As was mentioned, it is currently approved for retention of the office and the introduction of a hotel. That was part of a rezoning application that the Board of Supervisors approved in 2010. And part of that allowed for building part of the new structure in floodplain and increasing the FAR. And as Aaron said, that approval was in line with the current plan language that very much follows that rezoning to allow office, retail, and hotel up to 0.5 FAR. As he also mentioned, my client has, over the years of the going on over 12 years since the rezoning was approved in 2010, had numerous conversations with hotel groups trying to make something work on this site to build a hotel. And perhaps because there are so many existing rooms across the street, across Richmond Highway, and further up the corridor, has just not been able to make that work. So in the last few years, many multifamily developer has come and knocking and has expressed interest in the site. One in particular I represented who was interested in acquiring the site and developing it with multifamily. That deal ultimately fell through once the investment partners realized that we needed to go through this comprehensive plan process. As you're probably all aware, not everybody, is positioned to go through the comprehensive plan process. So the owner's taken it on himself to present this application to move it forward, and then continue to engage in conversations with others who would develop the property. As you saw, this is sort of the tail end, near the tail end of the Richmond corridor. And I just note here that there are a lot of, as you're probably aware, VDOT has designated this as a phase 1 area for a lot of improvements to sidewalks and the highway along this stretch from here at the property on up further up the Richmond corridor. And these are the hotels that are nearby, three major shopping centers within a pretty nice walk. Existing Roy Rogers. For anyone who's interested, we have had conversations with the owners of the Roy Rogers about joining forces and consolidating the sites. To date, they have not been interested in doing that. They would like to retain their operation there at the corner. And as you can see, here's the Woodlawn House, Woodlawn Estate, and Pope Leahy House are over here behind the woods. Just briefly on the proposal, I'd note that while the nomination we submitted proposes 245 units at about 20 units per acre, this was based on an earlier development plan that one of the developers who was courting my client presented. As you can see, it's parked with surface parking lots. We would like to do structured parking and reduce some of that impervious surface area and introduce structured parking into the mix, which would be more in line with the county comprehensive plan and county policies. However, it is going to be challenging to do that with the 35-foot height limit. So I know that that's a feature of the Woodlawn Historic Preservation District in the zoning ordinance. But it is something we'd be interested in hearing from the community, whether there'd be any interest in potentially modifying that height restriction, because this won't be a site that'll be visible from either the Pope Leahy House or the Woodlawn Estate. So just something we throw out there as food for thought. We would dedicate a large part of the property I've highlighted here in green is within the RPA area, as Aaron mentioned. That would presumably, what we would foresee doing if this were to move forward and we were to rezone the property, we would offer that property to the Fairfax County Park Authority, which owns most of the land, including the pond and the natural area to the north of this area. We'd also be interested, even though my client, the property owner, is not a developer, we do, as I mentioned, have a lot of interest in the property. So if we proceed with this SSPA process and there's interest from the community, we anticipate that we would file a concurrent rezoning application and begin moving forward on that process as well. Finally, any future multifamily development on this property, we would envision definitely including workforce housing and or affordable housing, particularly needed in this part of the county, especially along the future BRT line. And we think it would be the perfect place for it, help activate the BRT line, this corridor, and the area retail. And last but not least, we did not include it in the nomination proposal, but we realize there is a desire from the community in this area to have at least some retail be part of the project. So that would be something that we'd be very interested in getting feedback on and pursuing, if there's a market for it and interest from the community and support from staff. So thanks very much for listening tonight, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Evan. All right, so if you can, make sure you just raise your hand in the chat. And if, by the way, if you're on, I should have said this earlier, but if you're on the phone, just make sure that you come off of mute. I think everybody that's on the phone is muted right now, but if you do want to have, if you do want to say something, you want to raise a comment, just come off mute and we'll get you in the right order. So Renee, you're up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's great to be able to build on the same footprint of something that's already there, obviously. And as a representative of Nature Forward, one of the things we think about a lot is staying out of our RPAs. And I know this site currently encroaches on the RPA, doesn't look like so much the floodplain. But given the county's recent passing of Resilient Fairfax, we're really thinking about how to think forward to make our areas more resilient and climate friendly. I like the idea of structured parking. And if that would be able to get some of this development out of the RPA to be able to restore some of that land in that top right-hand corner, I think that would make the application a lot more environmentally friendly. And I really appreciate the idea to donate some of that land to FCPA. I think that's great. So just a comment on the RPA.
Thank you, Renee. All right, next is Mary Payton.
Yeah, that pond is a kind of a backup from Dog Creek, and the there is because the Richmond Highway had a culvert that kind of constrained Doug through it. And I really think we need a kind of an assessment, maybe from Charles Smith over at the Station Department, to see what will happen to that area when the Route 1 the bridge is raised over Doe Creek. That will enable the creek to flow through. And he's told me it might drain that pond. I don't know. I mean, we need to the ecological systemic action that's going on there. That current I think is way, way, way too close to the floodplain. You can get your feet wet in the parking lot just about. This really needs to be sorted out a little better and figure out what's going to happen there when the Richmond Highway over Doe Creek and how that's going to affect that land. Otherwise, it seems like a really put parking lot that close to that pond. Otherwise, I think it's great to develop that area. I mean, into housing. I think that's okay, but I'm concerned about the elevation and the RPA.
Thanks, Mary. And you're cutting out just a little bit here and there, but I think we got the gist of what you're saying about Doe Creek and floodplain and the use. So thank you for that.
Okay, and I'm talking on behalf of South. Yeah. Okay.
And we didn't catch that, unfortunately. Can you say that again, Mary?
Oh, I speak County Task Force.
You're speaking on behalf of the South County Task Force. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Catherine, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to speak for myself, but also this nomination was brought forward to the Mount Vernon Council pre-pandemic, if I remember correctly. And we also had the same likes and dislikes. We don't want the surface parking. You've got the RPA. We need to improve the environmental conditions. Right now, Woodlawn has absolutely no view shed whatsoever. They've allowed all the trees, thank goodness, to grow up. So raising the height of this building or these buildings so you can get structured parking going is the right thing to do. And you'll have more green space, more environmental protections when you do that, and having a little bit more housing, you're going to help the county's desire for the numbers of units of housing they want to put in along this corridor. So good on you guys, and I hope the county will work with them to allow it to be increased in height. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next is Ron. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, what's the impact to the local schools? And if there is a construction cost, will the developer contribute to that?
Yeah, so as Mr. Calabrese indicated, that's something that we'd look at more closely if we proceed with a rezoning application. We do believe there is capacity in the area, and we would work with the county at the rezoning stage. Typically, we work with the Fairfax County Public School folks who have student generation factors that are used to estimate the number of students that are likely to be generated by given unit type and size and building construction, and we would be making a contribution in line with other applications to sort of offset the impact on schools. So thanks for the question.
All right, thank you for that question, Ron. And I would agree with what Evan indicated. We actually do the student generation at the plan amendment stage when nominations are added to the work program as well. So that is something that we take a look at when we're reviewing all the impacts. Any other questions on this nomination for the IMP building? Ron, did you have another question?
No.
All right. Your hand is still raised. So if you don't mind, just click on the hand button again, and that'll take it down. The next BY or By. Go ahead, By. Or BY. Okay. Any other comments? Any other questions? And again, if you're on the phone, you can participate. Just make sure that you come off of mute so we can hear you. Byron Phillips, go ahead.
Hi. Well, I'm actually Omar. Byron is my partner. We're both joining tonight. But my question for Evan is, right now with the height cap, essentially, how much do you think that you would need to increase the height of the structure beyond whatever the limit is? I think it's 35 feet, in order to accommodate for that that garage, so that there's not much like parking outside of the building.
Omar, thanks for the question. That's not something I have a hard and fast answer to, but just I can tell you that you just in terms of construction types and what you see in the area for a lot of buildings that have structured parking, it's often usually in the 5-story plus range, because typically if you're able, you have maybe you know, a level or two of parking below grade if possible. Sometimes the rock and water level conditions don't allow for that, so sometimes there's a grade or two of parking above that's sort of wrapped by units, but generally you see something in the 5 to 6 story range. It's something we haven't studied too thoroughly to give you a more, you know, concrete answer than that, but that's kind of what we'd be thinking. And just as a rule of thumb on a residential building, you can figure about roughly 10 feet a story. So you're talking about maybe instead of 35 feet, maybe 50 feet, 55 feet, something kind of in that ballpark.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Omar. Any last questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Evan, for presenting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Aaron, if you could flip back over to the staff presentation, we'll go over to the Laurel Hill Highlands nomination. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. So this is Laurel Hill Highlands, 8.7 acres approximately. This is located in the Pohick Planning District and the P5 Dominion Community Planning Sector. The adopted comprehensive plan is for residential use at a density of 0.2 to 0.5 dwelling units per acre. And this is also located in a suburban neighborhood. The nomination is for residential use at a density of 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre. This is the concept plan. This would be roughly 70 townhomes at a rough density of 8 dwelling units per acre. The considerations are that, again, this is planned for a very low density residential uses, the area. The suburban neighborhood, and that's on the east side of Ox Road. The west side is the low density single family detached residential area. So on the east side is the suburban neighborhood. This basically, again, is recommending little to no change in land use patterns, but could include a broader mix of housing types and some other community facilities. The much higher proposed density of 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre really is not something you see at all in the surrounding area, and it's pretty. Finally, the western portion of the subject area, that's parcel 19, is on the west side of Ox Road, and that would need to be subdivided if this were to progress to later stages in the development process. So I'll turn it over to the nominator for their presentation.
Thank you. This is Lori Greenleaf. Joe Franconi is with me here on the call, and I do have presentation. Can you all see that? So Aaron did describe the location and the general request, so I will highlight some of the aspects of the nomination and maybe clarify some of the information that was already presented. This is a nomination for consolidation of 5 properties totaling about 8.7 acres. The nomination only, as Aaron mentioned, only covers a portion of the northern lot that is owned by Vulcan. That is about 3.5 acres in that top lot. As you know, this SSPA process has been explained tonight. It's really the only process that would allow us to have a conversation about how these properties are planned, how they should be planned, how they should be developed. We are asking to continue this conversation to allow increased density and allow a density to be studied with the goal of landing on appropriate density. While there was a requirement to submit a concept plan, we want to hear comments on the density and have a dialogue about what the appropriate level is here. Some considerations we think need to be recognized. First, that the comprehensive plan does make a distinction in the Pohick district between land on the west side of 123 and land on the east side of 123, as Aaron had mentioned. The land on the east side in this area is planned for suburban neighborhood. The subject properties and those to the south, to the southeast, and to the northeast are planned for lot sizes of 2 to 5 acres in size, and those directly across Ox Road to the east is in the Kavanaugh subdivision. Those are planned to be half-acre to acre lots in size, and for the most part, the lots in this area do not conform to the current low-density comprehensive plan. So this area is more dense already than the comprehensive plan recommends. So in our view, to expect development in this sort of narrow band between 2 major roads to develop into lots of 2 acres to 5 acres in size is not reasonable, potentially not even feasible. And that's why we would like to talk about the appropriate density for these properties. Another point is within the existing concept for future development in the Pohick Planning District, in that language, is the goal of creating a wide range of housing types in the Pohick District, and that could be accomplished here. As you know, there is currently important replanning and marketing efforts going on at the workhouse to get restaurants, performance venues, etc. And more residents in the area will provide the support that the workhouse really needs for those additional facilities and to keep the existing facilities there afloat. Lastly, we ask that you consider, again, the location and shape of the properties we're talking about. These properties are sandwiched between 123 and Ox Road, and again, will unlikely develop at a lot size of 2 to 5 acres. So we are asking to continue this conversation about increased density, continue this onto the work program so all those aspects of density can be studied. Placing it on the work program, I think Graham mentioned this earlier, in no way means that it's an approval of any particular density at this point. It just means that the density will be studied and the housing type will be studied by staff and further by the community. As I mentioned, Joe is on the call, so I'm going to kick it over to him for any additional comments.
Yes, thank you, Lori. Thank you, Graham and Aaron. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your time tonight. We have done multiple projects in the Mount Vernon district over the years, and recently, a few years ago, have done the workhouse, Laurel Hill Crossing project over there at Workhouse in 123 on that property. And we've been through South County. It was years ago that we did that job, that we rezoned that job. And I know that there's been resistance. There was resistance at that point to any kind of single family attached density on that site. And we ultimately did go move forward with single family detached at about a 2.2 units per acre is about what it came out to over the total density. I believe this property, I know that there is some resistance and there's people on here. I know that we've made initial reach out to the land use committee at the South County Federation. And again, I'm imploring you all and asking you the same thing that I did at that last meeting. We do believe that the logistics of this property, with the way that it's sandwiched in between the two double yellow line roads, the character of this property changed drastically when 123 was built. I mean, I know that goes back years and years and years ago, but I think it's a real good opportunity to engage the community. I'd like to understand more what the resistance seems to be in Lorton to townhouses. I don't know if it's townhouses in general or townhouses specifically at this location, but I would like to have the discussion. I'd like to go through the process and see if we can come to a consensus. And I'm going to leave it off at that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Joe and Lori. So we'll open it up for questions and comments. So again, if you're on the phone, you're currently muted. So I just want to make sure that people know you'll need to come off mute on your phone in order to speak. So make sure that you do that and state your name for the record so that we can maintain an order in terms of our speakers. First is Brian Walsh. So Brian, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you very much. So I'm one of the homeowners that is actually in some of the pictures, the aerial shots. I can actually see this property from my front porch. And one of the things that bothers me about this proposal is that, when my wife and I bought this house that we live in right now about 20 years ago, we looked very carefully about what the zoning was around the community, because we didn't want to live in a place that had higher density than we currently live in. And it bothers me that the county can, or that somebody's actually coming through and asking the county now to rezone part of on what we based our decision. So that when I hear Lori and Joe talk about feasibility, what I hear really is about being able to make a profit on a bigger profit on these properties. They talk about these houses not being able to be developed, but in fact, there was a house was built there in the last several years on that strip of land, probably about 10 years ago. It's a very nice house on a nice lot. So I don't see why they can't adhere to the current zoning that is in place and has been in place for quite some time. I'm not interested in increasing somebody's profit margin by simply rezoning it in Aston County, and the residents who've made decisions about where to live based upon that zoning, and just because somebody wants to make more money on these properties. Over. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Mr. Vincent Wallace, and I too live on Ox Road, and my house is actually going to be looking at these townhouses. And not only do I have a concern about the density of the houses, but there are several things in my mind that actually comes into play when you're looking at this. One, there's already a traffic problem that's going to be caused, and when you add another, 70 houses and 2 cars per house coming down Ox Road, that's a safety factor for children that's here, as well as a traffic problem in general. The other piece is that, whenever you start to mix in low density housing and single family houses within the same neighborhood, everybody loses out, because the property value for those that have been longtime homeowners here, we actually lose money. So there's nothing to gain for those residents that has been here living on the Ox Road suite. Over.
Yes, sir. You want me to field these questions as we go, Aaron, or?
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and thank you to the callers. Joe, if you could, that'd be great. I'll just make one point of clarification for Brian. Brian, I just want to make sure in terms of the kind of the process that we're doing right now, you mentioned rezoning a couple of times. I'll just kind of reiterate that we're not considering a development proposal at a rezoning stage at this point. What we're doing at this stage is what we call, the concept plan, or the proposal, the nomination, if you will, which is essentially the very beginning of what can turn into, at some point, a development review and a formal zoning application. But this is the the very first step. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Graham,
But Joe, if you wanted to respond, go right ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I appreciate your question, and I got a couple of quick answers. I'm going to defer back to the first conversation we had from the first gentleman, I forget his name, the first presentation, and asked about a cost-benefit analysis. So as it goes to level of service in Fairfax County, if we are to get to the rezoning stage, we have to demonstrate that our impact, the traffic impact, the student impact, the library impact, the police impact, the fire and rescue impact, and the parks and recreation impact, that every person that we generate that is going to cost a level of service, we make a monetary contribution to offset that. And also in the case of traffic, it is very, very studied. It's one of the most common questions that come up during this process is traffic and stormwater. If we are able to go forward and we're successful in rezoning this property, Fairfax County will not approve this plan until we've demonstrated that we are not degrading the traffic in the intersections surrounding this property. If we are degrading that traffic, the letter grade of the specific intersections, then we have to make on-site or off-site measures to mitigate those. So that's what I'm going to speak to on that. I know we're in a limited format. And again, these are all the questions I would love to discuss with you all further in the work program. The second, when it comes to the question of townhouse and affordability, about property values. And again, this gets back to my first question to ask, is that a concern that you all have with townhouses coming into your neighborhood and devaluing your property? And I can assure you that that is quite the opposite. I can't speak factually and show you data now, but I can. I'm happy to put it together for a future presentation. These townhouses in this character, depending on what size, what ultimate density we ended up with if we were able to be successful, whether those units were 20-foot wide and there was 8 per acre, or whether those units were 40-foot wide or 38-foot wide and there were 4 per acre. So even in the lower range of what I'm talking about, as far as more smaller lots, you'd be talking about these houses, these townhouses selling in the 8, possibly 9, and in cases over $1 million. So I can assure you, and I don't know if you're going to believe it or not, but there is no devaluation to the property, to the surrounding properties. It will actually increase the value of the surrounding properties accordingly.
Yeah. This is Mr. Wallace again. I would definitely like to see that analysis that's done, as well as the traffic studies, before I would even consider this as something that I would approve over.
Mr. Wallace, I appreciate it. And if we are fortunate enough to be moved into the work program, I promise you we will engage. I have not done those traffic studies at this point. I have not done the school analysis, so we haven't done anything because, I mean, we're so early in this thing now. We're just hoping today that we can, this evening, that we can convince you all to give us a chance and come in with the understanding that ultimately we know we're not going to move forward with your support. And with our understanding, and I hope yours too, that at this point, we really can't give you much concrete. There's not. This is a concept at this point. We'd like to work with you and come up with a concept that would be acceptable to everyone.
Hi, this is Patty Klunder with Polymead.
Patty, sorry to interrupt, but just wanted to let you know, I think we'll have you as one of our speakers. We do have a couple of other folks that are kind of raising their hands ready to speak, but we'll make sure that you'll go after Alicia, who's our 5th caller. So
I need to star 6 to mute me again, correct?
I'm sorry?
I need to star 6 myself to mute me again, correct?
You can stay on, and yeah, if you don't mind, just mute yourself for now. The order that we'll go in for now is Renee, followed by BY, Mara, Diane, Alicia, and then and I forgot your name. I apologize.
Patty, no worries.
Patty. Okay, Patty. Then Patty, you'll go next. All right.
Okay,
all right.
Thank you.
And then followed by Phyllis. So go ahead, Renee.
Thanks. I have more of a question about the Vulcan-owned property. When you look on tax maps, it's split, as was addressed, kind of between the west side and the east side. And I know this isn't a rezoning, but in general, what would be happening in this process to that western side? Because since it seems to be in the tax maps at least one property, would it be treated separately and preserved in its current zoning? would there be an opportunity to preserve that wooded lot with a little bit of an RPA on it as open space or donated somehow? What's the thought process for that western side?
So that property is one parcel on both the east and west side. It was bifurcated when 123 was expanded, original 123. It is owned by Vulcan Lands, Inc., which is the owner operator of the Occoquan Quarry. At this point, Vulcan, I have had no discussion with Vulcan on that property on the west side. Their operations people have dictated that Vulcan Lands can sell this portion that's on the east side since it is discontinuous to there. They have their quarry operation over there. And honestly, I think the last thing that they probably want at this point is more residents over there next to the quarry. I'm speaking for myself and nothing from Vulcan, but we were approached only for this portion, and our application does state it is just a portion of that. It will need to be subdivided if we move forward, and we are prepared to do that.
Thank you so much.
And there will be no application or anything from that residual parcel on the west side of, we will not be doing anything with this or any further application that I'm involved with on the west side.
Thank you, Renee. BY, you're next.
Hi. The goal here is to make any new development appropriate, in keeping with the overall character of the area and considering the input from local residents. And we have had meetings and discussed this amongst a lot of our neighbors, and this simply doesn't meet the goal. The request up the density is not about, as they say, affordable housing or the county's considerable efforts to renovate, the workhouse. It's clearly out of character for our area. There are single family detached homes all up and down, clearly not townhome. My apologies. But the research I've done, often developers come in with an outrageous proposal like this one, only to make it look better in the eyes of the community and the county when they back off from 70 to 80 units to something else. This could be fewer townhouse units or a different plan altogether. Either way, townhomes do not meet the overall character of our neighborhood, whether they're older homes or newer ones, but they aren't townhomes. I expect what we ultimately will get is that the developer comes back to us with a plan for a cluster of single family homes, not unlike the ones I referenced earlier, just to make us kind of feel better. My opposition is to anything less than a half acre up to 1 acre lots. You brought up Vulcan, and this clearly is not going to, one of the lines from the proposal from the developer was revising the comprehensive plan language to allow an additional type of residential unity at the density proposed. And I can guarantee you this isn't going to create unity. It's only going to benefit 3 people, Vulcan Quarry and 2 homeowners, and irreparably harm the way of life for over 500 of us. Another point of the developer's proposal was for, trying to bring lower density housing and at lower price points to the area. Well, we have Route 1. There are hundreds of acres around this area, if that's truly the goal. But, I really say, let's call it what it is. The developer, with Vulcan's blessing, is out to make a buck at our expense. It's not a reach to think that Vulcan planned all along, when they bought the lot on Ox Road and demolished the house, that this was part of the plan. And why do I think that? Because the homes in question are valued at approximately $700,000. And the current assessed value of the Vulcan property is $2.2 million. So I implore Supervisor Stork, the Department of Planning and Development, the Board of Supervisors, not to move even into the work program. We have seen a lot of changes in the time that I have been here. Route 123 opens to 6 lanes. Intermittent sound walls went up. It was a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. 2 years later, they increased it to 55 miles an hour with no noise relief for anyone that lived along 123. And that noise level has dramatically increased due to downshifting trucks, high speeds at, high speed traffic, and no enforcement by the police. Then 2014, we changed Lorton Road to a 4-lane highway, cutting off access to our street. And as they say, build it and they will come. And here we are today. The Vulcan trucks go through our neighborhood. We have a new police station. We have a new animal shelter. Supervisor Stork is, a proponent of putting in a ski slope down the street from us with gondolas, mountain coasters, and everything else. And I honestly think enough is enough. We just cannot support that kind of density without a revision for, you talked about stormwater and sewers and sidewalks. Well, that's all going to come, but at what expense to the current landowners? Are they going to significantly make us seed portions of our front yards in order to put in these sidewalks? So there's quite, just to be, matter of fact, there is overwhelming opposition to the proposal. 100% of the participants I've spoke to in Kavanaugh Crossing, Hollymead, and along Knox Road are against this vote. We would hope that you vote, no on proceeding to staff review, no on proceeding to the providing recommendations, and in the end, no to moving to the work program. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up is Mara Keeney. Go ahead, Mara.
Thank you, and thank you to our last speaker who articulated our community's concerns so clearly. I want to say first, because I feel like Mr. Walsh, who spoke earlier, and our last speaker really summarized so much of the points that I was going to make, so I won't repeat them. But one thing that stood out to me from what Ms. Greenleaf said was, this is an initial reach out. It's a really good opportunity to engage with the community, and mentioned initial reach out to the Land Use Committee of the South County Federation. Now, I'm someone who attends those meetings not regularly, but intermittently when something is going to affect something that I'm concerned about. I live on Ox Road. We bought a home 10 years ago. That's a beautiful little 1938 Cape Cod on a ½ acre. We are not rich people. We bought our little single family home for $439,000 because as a teacher and my husband as a government employee, we can't afford a $900,000 or $1 million townhome. And we wanted a yard to raise a child. So we specifically bought in this neat little old area that was near the workhouse because it had these larger lots and because it had little single family homes. And it was the kind of community that we wanted our child to grow up in with a little bit of room to grow. So I attend the South County Meeting Federation. I have a young child, I'm a teacher, I'm busy at night, but I took 90 minutes out of my evening to attend that meeting. I took time beforehand to read the proposal and prepare. And every single member of our neighborhood that came onto that committee voiced absolute vociferous opposition to it. But no one, this developer was not represented. Ms. Gottlieb was not there. Mr. Franconi was not there. They were no-shows. So to say that they're interested in engaging with the community is a little bit disingenuous, because now I have lost another 2 hours with my child tonight, sitting on this same conversation where I think if you ask every person here, we're vociferously opposed to this level of density in our area. And it's not just the idea of being opposed to townhomes as a concept. It's if you have ever stood at the intersection of our little Ox Road and the new, much widened Hoos Road, the idea of there being 80 or more units on that corner is absolutely preposterous. My 9-year-old has to cross that intersection. There is no, the traffic that's already there that comes off 95 is overwhelming at times in the afternoon. The idea that there would be 100 more cars leaving from that one little intersection in the morning because they can't all go the other way in the morning because they blocked off the end of Workhouse Road, Ox Road at Workhouse Road. It's just, absolutely preposterous. So I can only conclude as a thinking person, as other people have mentioned, that this is just a wildly preposterous proposal that they're throwing out there to inflame us all and then come back with something that still we wouldn't have found acceptable from the beginning, but oh, they're going to look like heroes if it's now 40 units rather than 80. And I just feel like, as a community member, I feel like we already showed up to engage in the process. We already expressed widespread opposition. There was a lot of people who attended that. We now have like more than 60 people on this call, and I would imagine that probably half of them are from our neighborhood, because people have been walking, knocking on doors, talking about this with our neighbors. So I guess I'll just say I feel a little bit put off by these developers, because I don't feel like they are engaging in good faith in this process. And like the previous caller, I would say I would urge Supervisor Stork and others engaging in this process to not move forward with this, because honestly, I can't take hours more to engage in these work sessions over something that it's so far from reality as something that would be a reasonable development in this neighborhood. So thank you for listening. I urge you to not move forward with this in any way, shape, or form.
Graham, can I interject one thing? So I can assure you that we are very transparent, and we're transparent with everything we do. This, again, what I said earlier, was a concept. We had to submit a concept plan. We submitted one page that showed 70 or 80 units or whatever it is. It was not for shock and awe or to come back and do some kind of clustered single family. We evaluated the property under its current zoning, and even going to a 1 to 2 to the acre scenario like we did around the corner. Given the narrow depth, the depth between Ox Road and New 123, a road network for single family homes is not feasible. There's just not enough geometry. The geometry will not allow it. The only way to develop this into single family, even to the units by right, or would be under a R1 or an R2, would be to have 16, 17 individual driveways coming out onto Ox Road. So, and I can assure you that that's not what I'm coming back with. Given the land values in Fairfax County, I'm not going to tell you that I'm not a for-profit enterprise. I absolutely am. But, the housing stock in Fairfax County, I think we can all agree, is aging. There's not a lot of new opportunities. And in the affordable housing world, housing affordability is a component of that. So what that means in a nutshell is, if you can't have affordable housing without building all the different price points of housing, from the very most affordable to the very most expensive, it creates a cycle of people moving up into, and this would be a move up product. This would not be a starter home. This would be a luxury townhouse, a move up product for somebody to move out of their smaller one, thus making a space for somebody else to backfill. So we are at not a crisis level, but we are way short on housing units. And people like me and my colleagues, this is what we do in bringing this stuff forward. So again, I'm not coming in for shock and awe with 80 units and then come back and show you 20 as a single family. That's not what I would do. I would like to engage you, and let's discuss what an appropriate density between 8 units to the acre and 2 units to the acre are, and see if we can get a path forward. You might be surprised to get engaged in the process and see that there can be, substantive outcome that benefits everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. And I did want to just raise, I know we got a couple of people, and we'll make sure that we can get through the people that have raised their hands so far. It is 8:50, and we do have one more nomination to review after this one. So if you're able and you have a kind of a similar comment to what's been expressed previously, if you could just indicate as such, and we'll still be able to get through your comments, but I just want to make sure that people are able to get through all the nominations, and then we can move that along. So if you're able to, please try to condense your comments down so that we can move these along. Next is Diane. Go ahead, Diane. Diane, can you hear us? All right, we'll try to come back to Diane. Next is Alicia. Okay. Looks like Alicia's gone off. So I think next up is Patty.
I'm sorry, I was just having trouble coming off mute. My
Oh,
apologies.
okay, go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, so ditto to what Maura and the lady before her said. To say you're going to have a fight on your hands is an understatement. I'm speaking on behalf of Saunas Court. No one on this particular neighborhood supports the proposal. I don't know if anyone from the county has taken the time to visit this part of the county and that particular intersection. And Maura's 9-year-old is best friends with my 10-year-old, who also rides his bike down that road. I have run by that intersection 1,813 times. I run at 5:30 in the morning every morning. It is a community that is historic in nature. It is beautiful townhomes. It is so pleasurable to run down it. Or the farmhomes, I'm sorry. Adding townhomes is not within character at all. Adding traffic to Ox Road, which had over 90 accidents last year and 5 deaths since we've lived here in 5 years, is crazy. This whole proposal, the requirements the county puts on homeowners, and I could go off on a soapbox on this, and RPA and everything else you do to our land, and you restrict us. And the fact that they would even consider this, I'm angry. I'm furious. I'm furious that, again, I'm spending my time tonight. Maura is spending her time, and all of these neighbors who live in those beautiful homes along this road have to spend their time even discussing this. A half an acre would be appropriate for single family homes. That's what fits in this area. It fits in our community. I don't support it. So to Supervisor Stork and to the extended government employees on here, you're in for a fight. And I hope you know that.
This is Diane Craney. I don't think you were able to hear me before. Am I able to speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Diane. Thank you.
Now? Okay, I'm sorry about that. I had a technical glitch. I appreciate what the last 3 homeowners indicated, and also obviously agree with them. One of the things I find interesting is, what Lori Gottlieb, Joe Franconi presented is the same as, very similar, I should say. The irony, right, is that the presentation that they made to the South County Federation that Maura indicated that I also attended had another lot included and had 70 to 80 townhomes proposed in that. It was vehemently opposed by all the attendees. It was, I think, Mr. First comment that he has they've not seen that type of opposition by homeowners that early in a process. And I find it amazing, remarkable, that this concept plan that's then moved forward and been presented to the county for nomination has one less lot and the same number of units that was rejected at the South County Federation level. Why? If Mr. Franconi and Ms. Gottlieb are willing to come to a lower density, why would that not have been the proposal presented to the county for nomination? This housing type and density would be a waste of county resources to study via this current proposal. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Diane. The next caller is Patty. I think, Patty, you were on the phone, so you can just go off of mute.
I believe I'm off mute. Did that work?
It did. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, I concur with everybody that has spoken before me. I've been in this community, Hollymead, for 22 years. I'm an original owner, and I was president of our homeowners association for 16 years. And I've had to deal with this builder on multiple accounts, which is the property that he was discussing to the side of our community along what is now called Workhouse Road. And they came in the beginning with very high numbers, and they came back with lower numbers, and then again with lower numbers. Still, what they provided was never what our community and Kavanaugh were happy with, but that didn't matter. What mattered was money. And I do not trust this builder. They kept giving us the same story they're telling us right now. They even came to my home with some champagne at a meeting that I was trying to hold where they could talk to my community, which looked like I was in their back pocket, which I never was. So again, I do not trust this builder. I do not trust the way that they approach people. I am very worried about the safety. We just had 3 of our children from South County High School die on Leach Chapel. Coos Road is going to become incredibly more dangerous if we have another close to 200 cars leaving from this particular zone going down Coos Road to get to work. I do not want to have to attend another funeral for another child because of overdevelopment and roads that are not safe. I appreciate that something needs to be done with that land, but I do not respect what's being presented to us. I've lived in this neighborhood, in this community far too long to witness what has been taking place. Something needs to be done where we are no longer endangering our children and making the people that have been living here for quite some time miserable. That's all I can say right now, but I will be attending South County Federation meetings, and I will be attending future meetings, and I will be sending in information. But I love this community. I'm a teacher in this community. This community has been my heart and soul for quite some time, and we need to stop this overbuilding. I'm done talking. Thank you.
Patty, thank you. And no disrespect intended, but I have never been to your house with or without champagne. So I think you may have me confused with someone else. I appreciate your comments. And again, I hope all I want to do is work to try to, no one's ever going to be happy 100% with anything that, welcome to 2023. But I still believe, even with all the negative thing, that there's a compromise that could be had, that something should be done with this property, that we can do something there that will be appropriate and harmonious with the existing community and will provide some new housing stock in the county. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Patty, and thank you, Joe. Next is Phyllis, followed by Nick and Gay. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Hi, Phyllis Wyatt. I have been living here in Lorton on Ox Road for over 51 years. One of the original owners here. The prison was down the road. It was taken down. Art Center was put in. When Kavanaugh Crossing was built, I had no objections to it because people wanted to come and live in Fairfax County. Same thing with Hollymead. There was a farm there, had a pond. My children fished in that pond, rode their bikes around. The owner sold it and Hollymead was built. I had no objections to that either. Either development's being built here. My question is tonight is why the community wouldn't, new and old, come together and move forward. This will be diversity for the county and for people who want to come and live in the county and have a home in the county. This was a 2-lane road before in the front, before the 123 was built in the back. They've widened some of the other roads. So I want to see this project go forward for further discussion.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next is Nick Firth, followed by Gay Stafford, and then Robert. So go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, my name is Nick Firth. I'm the current land use chair and president of the South County Federation. Also a resident of Occoquan Overlook, right across the street off of Pennywell Drive. We did meet with the applicant several months ago. The applicant was not in attendance at that meeting, but I just want to, can't add much more to what everybody said. I think that message is kind of loud and clear, but I just wanted to add in that at that land use committee meeting, there was unanimous opposition to moving this forward in its current design or anywhere kind of close to its current design. There might be an opportunity to do something on this strip. It is in kind of an aging strip, but I don't think we've seen anything yet that is close or acceptable to the residents in this area.
Nick, I appreciate your comment. And again, alls I'm hoping to end up with is a discussion on what would be an appropriate use and density, whether it's single family attached or single family detached or something along those lines. I think I understand the single family rationale in Lorton, but I think, you need to look at each individual property on its own. And this property's character completely changed when 123 was built behind it. There's a sound wall that another caller mentioned earlier that runs for a portion of that widening. The Vulcan property and the next two lots down, that wall is not there. So that wall was omitted from somewhere. It breaks somewhere between that third and fourth lot down there. So of course, that in a development that we would do, any development that we would do, that sound wall is going to get completed at our expense. So again, the process needs to be an engaged process, and people are passionate on both sides of it, myself included. Let's have a discussion on what is appropriate there. This is a concept only. The SSPA that we're in is the proper format to have the discussion. Regardless of whether, I know Patty expounded questions about my trust. I'm hoping that she's got somebody convinced. I've done multiple projects in Mount Vernon over the last 20 years, and I can drive back into any one of them, and I'm proud of all of them. I have friends that I've made with people that when I used to build houses, and the people that have moved in the communities that we've developed. So again, all I want is a chance. I'm not, contrary to popular belief, I'm not a multimillionaire. I don't have horns. I got rid of my pitchfork and my tail was cropped years ago. So all I want is a chance to sit down and go through a process and try to work something out. For my benefit, yes. But I think there is benefit to the community as a whole that comes out of development. When you stop growing, that's not good. And the opportunities for growth in Fairfax County are very limited. We should be studying all of them and maximizing them to their highest and best use. And I think this process would afford us the opportunity to do that here.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Joe. And just looking at the clock, it is 9:03. So I want to just reiterate that we do have one more nomination that we want to review tonight. So with that being said, I think we have 4 more speakers lined up. I think we'll probably just limit it at that in order to be able to proceed to the next nomination. But this is not the only opportunity to provide comments either to DPD staff, district supervisor, Supervisor Stork, or to Joe, Franconi, and Lori. So just know that you can send staff comments at dpdsspa@fairfaxcounty.gov. And I'll drop a couple of other ways that you can send comments along in the chat as well. So we'll limit it from here on out. We'll do Gay Stafford, followed by Robert, then Sue, and then Jeff. You'll be the last speaker for this nomination. Go ahead, Gay.
Hi there. I live very near this area, and I have a question for Joe, if I could. When you were doing your presentation, if I wrote my notes correctly, you used as a justification of this acreage as this development would be providing affordable housing. And then if I remember correctly, you said that the townhouses would be luxury townhouses starting at $800,000. And in my world, that is not affordable. I welcome your comment.
Okay, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. So I did not mention affordable housing. I said housing affordability. However, I should have mentioned in the Fairfax County zoning ordinance, if you have a development of over 50 units, 50 individual units of any type, you need to meet a minimum threshold of 10% as affordable dwelling units. That now in a townhouse regime like this, that does not go down to the lower AMIs, but it does start to it incorporates people at 80 and 120% of the AMI. So again, and this is where, this leads me, and I know we're getting short on time, so I'm not going to go off, but to provide affordable housing, when you build affordable housing and in our climate, in our economy today, it is a subsidy to put those units. So if there are 70 units there, 7 of those units are going to be in the workforce housing, which are going to be sold at a price that are affordable to somebody making 80 to 120% of the AMI of Fairfax County. So this, while it's not true affordable housing, this is where you get into your true workforce housing and stuff like that. So 7 of the, if it was 10 units, if it was 70 units, there would be 7 of those units that would be sold at that price. So there would be an affordable housing component contained in the rezoning.
Thank you, Joe. Next is Robert. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, thanks. So I am the president of the Kavanaugh Crossing HOA, and I did just need to make a few comments. And I'll keep them brief and look forward to future engagement. But Ox Road is it's very narrow. It floods, and people speed on it trying to get between Hoos Road and Workhouse Road. And as I-95 backs up, so does that area get congested. And an additional, as people stated, 100 to 200 additional potential drivers is only going to make that worse. I think, the best that we could even think about having there is the density that is already in the Hollymead and Kavanaugh Crossing area. That's the only comments I have for tonight. Over.
All right, thank you.
Real quick, let me jump in one thing. So again, I appreciate your comment. If we were successful, there would be some improvements there on Ox Road at our frontage of the portion. Okay, there would definitely be a right turn lane, and there would more than likely be a center left turn into this development. And again, if we could have a conversation and get to brass tacks, Kavanaugh Crossing is an interesting subdivision down in Lorton. Those lots were not subdivided under the ordinance that we currently have. They were subdivided prior to the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, the original zoning ordinance in the 70s coming in Fairfax County. So those lots were platted and recorded, and I'm not exactly sure. I looked at this a long time ago. I think it was the 40s or the 50s. They remained wooded. They were there until I believe it was Brookfield. I mean, that job set a lot of precedents for height limitation that was when I was building houses. So I know they go way back. So again, the discussion I'd like to have is somewhere between the actual constructed density that Kavanaugh Crossing is built on now and Hollymead. I think we can come up with a compromise that will suffice and meet everybody's expectations and be able to move the project forward. And do I feel like it's 8 units to the acre? No, I don't. I want to reiterate, I'm not submitting something for shock and awe and coming back for less. What I showed was the maximum that would be conceivable on there. And again, just want to go through the process. I can't reiterate that enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Robert. Last two are Sue and Jeff. Go ahead, Sue. Sue, if you're trying to speak, we can't hear you because you're still on mute. Can you come off of mute, please? All right, so Sue, unfortunately, we can't hear you. So Jeff, we'll move on to you. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Joe. All I keep hearing are from the individuals who are really going to be directly affected by this. In this call, we've heard individuals that are directly facing these parcels. We've heard from individuals who are right across the street from Hoos who would be impacted, and the people south of this. I've heard several individuals who will be affected by it. We have expressed our opinions on it, and I share their same sentiments. But what I don't hear from Joe is kind of any really backing down from his submission. you know, you've heard homeowners say single family homes, and I still keep hearing townhomes from Joe. I want to get more clarification on that. Is it just why do you keep pushing back on attached homes rather than detached homes?
Again, it's the characteristic, it's the logistics, the site logistics, basically the site geometry. With the narrow depth of the property between 123 and Ox Road, a road network and single family lots and cul-de-sacs, we simply just don't have the geometry to be able to make it work in a single family development. So, but with that being said, when I say townhomes, we keep going back to townhomes, and that is what I talk. But let's arrive at an appropriate density. Like, is it 2 to the acre? Is it 5 to the acre? Something along those lines. And let's not even talk about the product, because again, there are single family attached units, okay, that are a villa style unit. It's a 2-story type unit instead of a 3-story unit. Instead of being like a townhouse that's 20 foot wide and 40 to 45 feet deep, 46 feet deep, these units are more like 35 to 40 foot wide and 70 foot deep on 2 floors. This is a true villa. We could also go further, and again, my door is open on everything. I could not make this what is classified as an independent living for senior citizens, because I wouldn't meet the criteria. So I can't, and I'm not asking for any bonus density that would be available to me under an independent living facility. I'm talking about a residential unit for somebody 55 years or older with no school age children. So I can't do it in that, but I could do it in a deed restricted 55-year-old community with very similar deed restrictions, that it would give it all the covenants for 55 and over. And I would love to explore that option. So again, that's just another thing. I think the discussion that we really need to have, and what will bear everything out. And if we reach an impasse, I'm fine. We can all go on our way. But I still believe that we can come up with a density, a per unit per acre density. And then does it matter at that point if it's single family attached or detached? I think I'd love to have that discussion another day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. But our area is really 1 to 2 per acre, or I'm sorry, it's 1 acre. It's 1 home per acre relative in this area, and it would really mess up the makeup of this strip entirely.
Okay, I want to say one more thing though while we have this map up. If you look at our blue highlighted property there, and you look straight across the street at where Kavanaugh is, those smaller railroad looking lots that are in there. And then if you go south right there where your cursor is now, Graham, go down, that's where it borders Hollymead. So you see the character of those Hollymead subdivided R1 lots, okay? And you look at the density that is built next door on Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh is built out, and I'm not going to say a number. Kavanaugh, and I will, if we move forward, I will ascertain the actual density that Kavanaugh is built out. It's a simple math exercise, but you can see that Kavanaugh is not developed at the same density as Hollymead or anything else around there. The lots are much smaller. They average under 10,000 square feet. So again, I just want to have what I would like to do is determine appropriate density and then go into product. Let's roll up our sleeves and go to work on the thing. Thank you.
Well, Kavanaugh is 1 acre. Kavanaugh is half-acre lots, but you're not proposing that. You're still stuck, as Jeff said, on townhouses, or now you're throwing in some senior living, feasibility study. I just don't think you're hearing us. Anything less than a half acre is a non-starter, and we are in lockstep.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's comments on this. Thank you, Lori and Joe.
Hi, this is Roger and Sue. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder, Sue, are we back to their recent property here? There are 6 complete houses between us and Workhouse on our property, and 2 parcels on the north, 2 parcels on the south. Their density is about a half acre because there's half of their property is stormwater management. And so their actual density here is twice that. We got damage to our house from the vibration caused from their equipment. They came in and took pictures, and then we put in a claim, and then they said they're ignoring it. So I'd like to get that resolved. Also, we've had damage to windows from the blasting from Vulcan. There's another participant in this. Fairfax County is already larger has more population than 8 of the United States, including the District of Columbia as 9. If it gets 10% bigger, it'll exceed Maine, Hawaii, and New Hampshire. So I think we've got enough people here. So I am totally against this, and I would like to get some help with the damages from existing stuff you guys have done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And once again, we do need to move on. We do have one more nomination to review. So, Aaron, if you're able,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
We've been
I'm
trying
sorry.
to speak for a while because this is going to be happening right in front of our house.
Understood, ma'am. And unfortunately, we are well over our time that's allotted for the evening. So, I hear you, and
Yep,
we'll be able to talk offline. There's other ways to provide public comments, but we do need to move on. So, thank you for that. Aaron, if you could, please pull up the next presentation for the next Lorton nomination. Thank you.
Okay, can you see that? Oh, okay, so this is the Shops of Lorton Valley, and this is approximately 19.8 acres. This is again in the Pohick Planning District, the P5 Dominion Community Planning Sector. The adopted plan is for residential use at a density of 0.5 to 1 dwelling unit per acre, as shown on the plan map. And it is planned and developed as a neighborhood shopping center, not to exceed 125,000 gross square feet with conditions. It's also the plan text also it says that the center is designed as an integrated retail center and not a strip commercial center, and should have no freestanding retail uses. The nomination is for a freestanding retail use with a drive-through facility. This is the concept plan for the nomination. So here's the freestanding retail use with the drive-through. So the considerations that staff has identified is that due to its low density residential setting, the adopted plan recommends no freestanding retail uses as part of the shopping center. However, out parcels at shopping centers are common, and with careful site design and architecture, out parcels can be integrated into shopping centers located in residential settings. There's also an appendix in the land use element of the policy plan that includes recommendations for the design of drive-through uses, and specifically for ways to integrate them into existing development in a compatible manner with surrounding uses. So now I will turn it over to the nominator for their presentation.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Aaron, for that brief presentation. And thank you for everyone who's joining us tonight, and Happy New Year to everyone. I know it's just been a few weeks, but always happy to have a new year upon us. Good evening. My name is Bernie Sicicito. I'm a land use planner here at the firm Walsh Colucci, and I'm representing the nominator here for Lorton Valley Shops. And the nominator is also online tonight, should you have any particular questions for them. So staff already did a pretty good job of describing the application area. Just want to do a quick run through. The property is currently zoned C6 and is built with a shopping center of about 107,000 square feet. It is surrounded by planned development housing neighborhood to the east, a small church property to the north, and R1 zoning on the other side of Ox Road. Ox Road is this main road here, and there is an elementary school to the north of the property. About a year and a half ago, the property did receive a special exception to permit a restaurant to replace the former bank at the, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, at the bottom right-hand corner of the U of the shopping center. That is now a Popeyes restaurant. And the nomination itself, as Aaron described, is for a freestanding retail use in the center here in the parking lot. And this is, again, just a conceptual plan. We are requesting approximately 2,000 square feet. This will not increase the planned intensity of 125,000 gross square foot maximum for the property. We are looking forward to further developing this concept, working with staff, working with the community, into creating something that will be beneficial to the community. What has occurred, as everyone known, for the last couple of years with the pandemic is that there's been a huge need and interest by retail consumers for additional drive-through uses for restaurants. Currently, the comprehensive plan does not allow for the property, the shopping center, to have the flexibility to meet the new demands of today's modern post-COVID, post-pandemic society. With this request, it will help further keep the shopping center relevant and able to have certain tenants to remain here in this location and to continue serving the greater Lorton area. And again, our request is, and this is just an example edit from the existing plan text, is just to strike out the section where it says no freestanding retail structures and to replace it with proposed freestanding retail structures should be rigorously reviewed. What does that mean? It means that as this moves forward, not only through a plan amendment, but hopefully through a concurrent special exception entitlement process, that it will have robust conversations with the community and with staff in terms of site design, circulation, environmental impacts, architecture, further landscaping. We did meet with the South County Federation for this idea about a year ago today, January 25th of 2022. They recommended that the property owner wait until the Popeyes restaurant opens in this past summer, which it did on May 2022, and to observe the potential impacts or changes in traffic circulation with the opening of the Popeyes here in the lower right-hand corner. That has happened. We've since had the summer and fall and the winter holiday shopping season, and there hasn't been really much of a change to the traffic patterns here. So with that request, I am here to respond to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bernie. First up is Diane, followed by Nick Firth.
Hi, Bernie. I just want to say first, I'm not against freestanding retail space at the shops there at Lorton Valley. The one question I do have is in the drawing that you have on screen, the opening that is there nearest the entrance, the main entrance to the shopping center that's at the traffic light on 123, could there be consideration made to not have an opening going into that freestanding retail space at that point. And the reason I ask that is oftentimes traffic backs up with cars trying, currently cars trying to get in and out of that, in and out of the main parking lot. And my concern would be if, a good deal of traffic trying to come out right there at the entrance point, that could just be a little bit dangerous. Yeah, where
Diane,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Do you have something else to say?
No, I was going to say you almost had the X at the spot that I was referring to. It's basically the first opening there going into, the retail space there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate your comments. Again, this is purely conceptual. We just provided a graphic just to show the general location of a retail pad. We will definitely take that consideration, take your concern to heart, and we will work with staff in the community to provide a design that would fit best for this property, and with taking into any traffic impacts that may come from it.
Appreciated.
Thank you, Diane. Next is Nick. Go ahead, Nick.
Hi, I will just divest that I'm a daily participant at Starbucks in the morning. One thing I do find disturbing is that a lot of people park right out front of Starbucks and make it very difficult to pull your car in and out to get out of there. I think it would be good for Starbucks to move out of there. Like was mentioned, we did want to make sure that the Popeyes didn't have a major impact on the shopping center, and I will say from personal experience, I don't think it has. It does an okay business, but certainly it's not backing and stacking in their drive-through. I think Starbucks is an appropriate, use to have as a standalone building. However, this is all about traffic, ingress, egress. You've got, an ability to stack about 3 cars. I think there's 2 in the picture here to get out of here. There's 2 ways in, but there's 2 rights in and only 1 left in to get in there, which is normally fine, but it's getting out. This needs to add more uses like this. You need a major overhaul of the ability to get people out of here. Allowing more time at the light would help. This is already a dangerous intersection as it is. So if this moves forward, I would like to see a major investment in traffic studies and ability to get people, safely out of this shopping center. It can't be just some striping. It's got to be something, that's broader than that.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, again, we will continue to further study and evolve this conceptual site plan.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Bernie. Next is Jay, followed by Alicia. Go ahead, Jay.
Hey, thank you. Hey, I'm not totally against a freestanding structure in the parking lot. It depends on what moves in there. If this is all about Starbucks moving in there, I have not driven by a Starbucks that has a drive-through that doesn't have a ton of cars waiting in line throughout the entire day. And the last speaker talked about the difficulty already getting out of there. If you're trying to make when you go from the one side where Five Guys is, and you pick up from Five Guys, and you're trying to go down that one row that's kind of depicted there, traffic back up there already. This whole intersection gets blocked a lot of times when people are trying to get into that left turn lane to exit. That there are people that will just completely block that intersection, and I think when you've got people kind of turning in to get into Starbucks, to take a right-hand turn there, and then to make that immediate right-hand turn, that will back up. I don't know where you're going to put those cars, before they, one order and then wait for their, pick up their drinks and then turn around and come back out again. I think this is, it's a nightmare already putting in a standalone Starbucks with a drive-through capability with the amount of cars that's going to draw. I don't think there's enough space in this entire parking lot for anybody to re-wicker the whole traffic pattern to make it better than what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay. Next is Alicia, followed by Dale. Go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, just a quick question and then a comment. My question, which we can answer after the comment, I just wanted to be clear, this is just for one retail space, not multiple retail space. And then the comment is, I love Starbucks, and if this is Starbucks, I just think it's a great idea. My son would vote for Chick-fil-A, but I do have the concerns that the last guest just made around traffic. We are down there daily. That traffic backs up really bad. There are multiple accidents at that intersection every year. So I think you'd have to really think about how we handle the traffic, not only through the drive-through, but the entrance and the exit into that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. And to answer your question, yes, the intent is for one retail user to be located in this retail pad.
Thank you.
All right, next is Dale. Go ahead, Dale.
Thank you. 3 points. Point number one, did you consider, Mr. Sushital, the idea of making the store parallel to 123 Ox Road rather than a 20-degree off? The only reason I'm saying that is by making it parallel is going to redo all of the parking and all of your queuing. Number two, arrows don't work. When this was first brought to us, the shopping center developers, owners said that they would put appropriate arrows in and think arrows, I'm sorry, they don't work. Hard concrete boundaries work. So they have to be hard curbs in order to direct the traffic. And I absolutely agree with the last three speakers that the traffic in and out of there would be heavy, and that needs to have a complete re-engineering of the traffic going in and out of there. And then third point, as I put in the chat as we were talking about the previous Laurel Highlands proposal, when this shopping center was built, at that time, I believe Ox Road was 40 miles an hour. It had not yet been elevated to a high-speed in transportation corridor, which is 55. There is no sound wall along there. So you have a lot of things to consider about what was here when it was originally in. That's, I think, why the zoning rules, and how it could possibly. I'm not opposed at all to the singles use right there, Starbucks. I think that actually would be quite good, and maybe remove that Starbucks out of the center of that traffic area that is always congested and always a safety concern as cars go stopped and in and around. But it's going to take an engineering study within the scope of that shopping center to redirect traffic to an appropriate barrel lane, to out and to in coming in. And I don't know if that's in the purview of your ability or whether the shopping center owner would do that. But it's going to be, in my estimation, at least something that major in order to make any proposal work safely along there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Definitely understand your concerns. Again, this is a conceptual site plan. We're not married to this design in front of you, but this is, again, just trying to have a representation of an example for a pad site. We will definitely consider any and all options of orientation of the building to potential outdoor spaces for the retail users, parking locations, and traffic circulation, as well as the placement of the drive-through. Definitely will take a very hard look at the traffic circulation plan for the property itself, as we hope to move forward with the plan amendment and hopefully concurrent special exception application. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dale, and thank you to Bernie. Alicia, did you have another question?
I'm sorry. No, I forgot to lower my hand.
No, no worries. I do it all the time. Anybody else have any other comments or questions on this nomination? And once again, for our phone speakers, if you do have a comment, you can just go off of mute and we can call on you that way.
Great work tonight, Graham. Appreciate the process. It's great to live in a part of the country and world that has this type of transparency.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate it. And thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate your attendance. I think we got a lot of great feedback on all the nominations. So thank you. This has been very, very successful in terms of receiving community feedback. Linwood, did you have a question or a comment?
Just wanted to echo the last two speakers' sentiments there, and I think if we do consider this application, one thing I hope to accomplish in the final language of the comprehensive plan is some verbiage that talks about, frankly, a wholesale redesign of the entire parking lot if this freestanding unit's to be considered. But I agree with everybody. The freestanding thing is not the problem. It's the traffic and the ingress and egress of this center.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, Supervisor Stork, did you want to say anything to close this out?
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has been part of the dialogue and really the opportunity. This is really what this is intended to be, which is to get people's reactions to some initial proposals that in turn, they're going to get a lot of, frankly, review before they see the light of day, and that's really where this is truly the beginning of the process. So I'm confident that the South County Federation and many of the other groups that are part of this call today and the individuals are going to continue to be monitoring this. I will be looking for as this moves along, to listen and weigh those views and make sure that I reflect those views as part of the decision I make on your behalf. So again, I just want to thank everybody for coming out and spending the time. I know it's a lot of time, but frankly, it's the way we do things in this country, at least in my mind, the way we do things right in this country, when we take time to listen and then we in turn change things, modify things based upon the feedback that we're getting. So again, Graham, awesome work on your part and the staff's part in putting this together. You guys truly have done yeoman's work here, and it's greatly appreciated by me. And I want to give you a round of applause and thanks for your work on all of our behalf.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Stork, and thank you, Nick. Really appreciate those words. And as Supervisor Stork did indicate, this is truly the beginning of the process. We're doing nomination meetings across the county. We had one in a different portion of Mount Vernon District on the Richmond Highway Corridor, northern portion of the Richmond Highway Corridor last week. We're going to be doing others in the Franconia District. If anyone is following nominations there, there are some in Springfield. There are a couple in Braddock District, and then there are plenty of others that are dispersed throughout the county. So go on our track a nomination website if you're interested in other areas of the county and looking at the proposals that are coming in. And then there is, as Aaron has on the slide here, a couple of opportunities to engage on these nominations in a series of Planning Commission workshops where the Planning Commission will develop kind of iteratively the list of nominations that they would recommend that the board put onto the work program for further study. So those dates are here. We don't have set agendas yet for those workshops, but those will more details on which nominations are going to be reviewed on which nights will be forthcoming once we're a bit further along. Dale, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I meant to say this earlier. By the way, excellent job tonight. Both you and Aaron just, really nailed the specifics on it and gave us room for the generalities to be asked. Will your meetings, the Planning Commission meetings on 22 February, 2 March, 9 March, and 50 March, will those also be on Microsoft Teams, or will they only be in person?
My understanding is that they'll be in person for sure. And I think that the Planning Commission is also still allowing phone testimony, for example. So it'll be in person, but I believe that they still have a hybrid component for those, but it would not be on MS Teams.
Okay, then how do I say that that's not the best decision we can make as a county? Given our current RSV rate and COVID and pneumonia and et cetera, if there's any way at least one or two of those can be online as well. I think you looked at a great number of people that were online tonight that were possibly unable to. There were 3 specific speakers in one land use that couldn't be there because of their work obligation and or children. So this does allow for greater citizen participation. And if there's any way we can, I don't want to say twist your arm because that sounds so ugly, but twist your arm that we could get at least some of those done online, because I think this does really work. You used it highly effectively. All of the presenters, all 5 presenters had their stuff together on the visuals. Just kick it around if you would, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And it's above my pay grade, but I will check in with the Planning Commission chairman and see. I'll pass that along for sure. So thank you for that. All right. Well, with that, I really appreciate your time. I know we're a little bit over what we had billed, but I really appreciate the comments, and we got a lot of great feedback tonight. So thank you for making this, making this the success that it was. So more to come at the Planning Commission, and Dale will pass along your request. But thank you very much, and we will post the recording of this meeting if you want to view it later to YouTube with a link to our track and nomination website. So if you want to view it later or send it around to anyone else, you feel free to do so once it's up. So thank you very much. You'll have a great night.